James Whitmore was a name that echoed through every upscale corridor in London's elite circles. The billionaire CEO of Luxora Technologies, James had built his empire from the ground up, turning a small startup into a global luxury tech brand known for innovation, opulence, and influence. With chiseled features, tailored suits, and an effortless charm that made him both respected and envied, James was often featured on magazine covers alongside world leaders and industry giants. But the jewel of his carefully crafted image wasn't just his billion-dollar company, it was his wife, Charlotte Whitmore. A former Oxford art student turned international curator, Charlotte was grace personified. Her philanthropic work with underprivileged youth and her sophisticated taste in art galleries made her beloved by both the public and the media. Together, they were more than just a power couple, they were a brand. Glossy tabloids called them London's modern royalty. Their photos were splashed across society pages, holding hands at galas, kissing on yacht vacations, hosting charity balls at their Mayfair estate. To outsiders, their life seemed scripted by fairy tales, extravagant homes in London, Tuscany, and the Maldives, private jets, and invitations to the Met Gala and Davos. Charlotte's social media portrayed tranquil morning teas in rose gardens, candid laughter between meetings, and loving glances exchanged with her husband during public events. But what the world didn't see was the silence at the dinner table, the absence of warmth in private, and the growing emotional distance between them. James had become consumed by his work, often leaving for urgent deals and returning days later without explanation. Charlotte, once his confidant and muse, now felt like a beautifully kept antique in his museum of status. Conversations turned into small talk. Affection into formality. And trust had started to fade, replaced by unease, late-night doubts, and a quiet ache in Charlotte's heart that even she couldn't yet name. It started with a whisper at a gala, barely audible beneath the clink of champagne glasses and the rustle of designer gowns, but enough to catch Charlotte's attention. A woman from the fashion scene leaned in, her voice hushed, eyes darting around. "I saw James leaving the Langston Hotel late last night." "Not alone." Charlotte smiled politely, brushing off the comment with the practiced ease of someone used to fending off rumors. But the seed was planted. Over the next few days, more murmurs followed at charity luncheons and private club dinners. A driver mentioned seeing James's car parked outside an exclusive penthouse suite. A junior executive let slip about James frequently canceling board meetings without explanation. Then came the photo. A grainy but unmistakable image made its way to the front page of the London Post, James Whitmore exiting the Langston Hotel at 1:43 a.m., accompanied by a tall, elegant blonde. She wore oversized sunglasses, a sleek red coat, and carried herself with the confidence of someone used to being watched. The headline screamed, "London's power CEO caught after dark, who's the mystery blonde?" Within hours, social media exploded. Speculation ran wild. Online sleuths quickly identified the woman as Vanessa Hart, a 27-year-old fashion model turned influencer with a reputation for dating high-profile men. Her Instagram, full of yacht selfies, exotic getaways, and cryptic captions about love and betrayal, only added fuel to the fire. When Charlotte saw the photo, her heart dropped, but she didn't flinch. In public, she maintained composure, issuing a brief statement, "I have no reason to believe anything other than my husband's loyalty." But in private, the mask slipped. That night, she sat alone in her home library, staring at the photo for hours. The expression on James's face wasn't guilt, it was comfort. Familiarity. Like he'd been there before. Charlotte's best friend, Isla, visited the next day. They sat on the terrace with tea cooling between them. Isla, always blunt, said what Charlotte wouldn't. "Don't let your heart protect him if your instincts say otherwise. You've sacrificed too much to be made a fool of." Charlotte nodded, her gaze distant. For the first time, she didn't rush to defend her husband. She began making discreet calls, lawyers, private investigators, and a security firm she once hired for an art heist recovery. She needed the truth. Even if it shattered everything. The decision didn't come easily, but Charlotte knew she couldn't rely on speculation or emotion anymore. Her heart battled against her mind, but eventually, logic prevailed. She reached out to an old contact, Edward Langley, a discreet private investigator known for his silence and skill. Within hours, the contract was signed. Within days, the truth unraveled faster than she ever imagined. Edward's updates arrived in encrypted emails, each one stabbing deeper than the last. James hadn't just met Vanessa Hart once or twice in secret. He had been involved with her for over 8 months. Their meetings were frequent and meticulously planned, far beyond the occasional tryst. Edward provided timestamps, photos, even videos, James holding Vanessa's hand at a coastal vineyard in Italy, kissing her neck in the back of a chauffeured Bentley, checking into a private suite under a fake name at the Rosemore estate. One image showed James placing a delicate necklace around Vanessa's neck, an emerald pendant that Charlotte remembered James claiming he had gifted to an international investor's wife as a diplomatic gesture. The truth gutted her. There were records of extravagant purchases, designer handbags, luxury spa weekends, and even a signed lease on a Kensington flat where Vanessa reportedly stayed 3 nights a week. Edward's final report was a detailed portfolio of betrayal, screenshots of affectionate texts, bookings under aliases, and statements from hotel staff who recognized James from his frequent visits. Alone in her study, Charlotte read it all in silence, her hands trembling. Her mind drifted into a swirl of flashbacks, standing at the altar with James under a canopy of white roses, the way he wiped away her tears during Leo's birth, the quiet promises whispered on their anniversary in Santorini. She remembered turning down her dream job in New York so James could build his company in London. The late nights she stayed up soothing Leo while James worked late. The dinners she planned that he never came home for. Every sacrifice, every moment she believed in him, suddenly felt like a mockery. Fueled by a storm of heartbreak and fury, she confronted him one evening when he returned from a business dinner. He was unbothered, casually loosening his tie, unaware of the tempest waiting in their living room. Charlotte threw the evidence down on the coffee table, the photos, the receipts, the printed texts. James glanced at them and laughed nervously. "Are you really going to believe some stalker's lies over your own husband?" he said, voice calm but calculating. He began twisting the narrative, accusing her of paranoia, suggesting she was letting gossip poison her judgment. "You've been distant lately," he said. "Maybe that's why you're imagining things." His words dripped with gaslighting. But Charlotte didn't waver. Her eyes, wet but sharp, locked onto his. For the first time, she wasn't questioning herself. She wasn't doubting her worth. James may have tried to manipulate her reality, but the evidence was irrefutable. Something inside her shattered, but another part of her, stronger, fiercer, began to rise. The morning it happened was oddly quiet, almost deceptively peaceful. Charlotte was sipping her Earl Grey in the sunroom when her phone buzzed repeatedly. Dozens of messages flooded in, screenshots, shocked emojis, and links from friends, associates, and even distant acquaintances she hadn't spoken to in years. Confused, she opened the first one. It was a screenshot of Vanessa Hart's latest Instagram post. The image was artfully curated, Vanessa in soft lighting, one hand resting gently on her stomach, the other holding a sonogram photo. But it was the caption that sent a tremor through Charlotte's chest. He said he'd leave his wife. "Our child deserves better." There was no name mentioned, but it didn't matter. The timing, the context, and the millions of followers reading between the lines left no room for doubt. Within minutes, gossip blogs ran wild with it. Celeb Snap headlined, "Vanessa Hart claims baby with billionaire James Whitmore." The tabloids had a field day. Every outlet scrambled to cover the scandal. Photos of James and Vanessa surfaced in every article, her sitting on his lap in a beachside cabana, them sharing a kiss in front of a private jet, him sneaking out of her building at dawn. News anchors speculated. Influencers posted reaction videos. Memes flooded the internet. Tech daddy and billionaire baby drama trended on Twitter. But the consequences reached far beyond the tabloids. Luxora Technologies shares began to nosedive. Investors panicked, fearing a scandal of this magnitude would cripple the company's reputation. Board members called emergency meetings. Clients began pulling out of multi-million-pound contracts. James's spotless brand, one built over years of discipline and curated luxury, was unraveling in real time. Meanwhile, Charlotte sat frozen on the chaise lounge, reading the words over and over. Our child. He said he'd leave his wife. It wasn't just the betrayal anymore, it was the audacity, the public exposure, the sheer cruelty of being dragged into a media circus without warning. She thought she had braced herself for the worst, but nothing could have prepared her for the humiliation of seeing the world pity her, dissect her marriage, and celebrate Vanessa as some kind of underdog heroine. Her fingers trembled as she set the phone down, but her mind had never been clearer. The grief had burned through her and left something sharper in its place, resolve. She stood up, walked into her home office, and pulled out the folder her solicitor had prepared weeks ago, the divorce documents. Her signature was swift, precise. A storm had passed through her life, but she would not let it bury her. Later that day, Charlotte made a public statement. In an Instagram post of her own, a simple black background with white text, she wrote, "I won't stay silent anymore." The caption read, "Thank you for the support. My focus now is healing and protecting my son." Comments poured in. Thousands of women, public figures, and even celebrities stood by her, praising her grace, her strength. Charlotte didn't smile as she read them, but deep inside, she felt something shift. The world now saw her not as the silent, elegant wife in the background of a powerful man's life, but as a woman reclaiming her voice. And she intended to use it. In just a matter of days, James Whitmore's entire world collapsed around him. Once celebrated as a visionary billionaire and global business icon, he was now the subject of relentless ridicule. The internet, always hungry for scandal, had turned him into its latest spectacle. Meme culture didn't spare him for a second. Images of him from press conferences and charity galas were photoshopped and plastered across social media with the caption "From CEO to Cheater." Others showed side-by-sides of him standing next to Charlotte, graceful, composed, timeless, juxtaposed with Vanessa's Instagram post, complete with sarcastic commentary, "Left a queen for chaos." Late-night talk show hosts made him the punchline of their monologues. Parody accounts popped up overnight, mocking his fall from grace, while TikTokers reenacted imaginary phone calls between James and his PR team, drawing millions of views. But the impact went far beyond online embarrassment. James couldn't step outside without being hounded by paparazzi. They camped outside his penthouse, chased his car, shouted questions about the alleged baby and the divorce. Security guards formed a protective ring around him as he moved in and out of buildings, but even that couldn't shield him from the verbal onslaught and camera flashes. Meanwhile, behind the closed doors of Luxora Technologies' towering headquarters, his empire was trembling. Investors called in frantic meetings. Some issued public statements distancing themselves from James's personal conduct. Stockholders demanded explanations. Journalists camped outside Luxora's lobby. His phone buzzed constantly with board members asking, "What are you doing to fix this, and should we consider temporary leadership change?" The trust that had taken years to build was dissolving by the hour. And while James scrambled to do damage control, Charlotte stood tall amid the chaos. The world rallied behind her. Her social media following tripled. Powerful women from fashion, politics, and media reached out with solidarity and public endorsements. She was invited onto daytime shows, offered book deals, and even asked to speak at a major women's leadership conference. And Charlotte, with her quiet strength, handled it all with elegance, focusing not on revenge but on restoring her own peace and dignity. Her calm presence became a symbol of self-respect and silent resilience. She didn't need to scream, her grace was louder than any scandal. Vanessa, on the other hand, took center stage in a different kind of spotlight. She accepted an invitation to appear on Good Morning Britain, sitting across from a prim host in a pastel pink suit, wiping away perfectly timed tears. Her voice trembled as she described James's promises, how he told her he loved her, how he swore he was trapped in an unhappy marriage. "I didn't ask for this," she said, placing a hand on her stomach. "I only wanted what was best for my child." The interview aired across networks and was clipped for every digital platform. Sympathy rolled in from some, but others saw it as a calculated move. As the world debated Vanessa's sincerity and James's downfall, one truth stood clear: this scandal had reshaped the lives of everyone involved. And James, once untouchable, was now clawing for damage control in a world that no longer looked at him with admiration, but contempt. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when James appeared at the entrance of the Whitmore gallery, drenched but determined. Charlotte's staff was caught off guard. He hadn't scheduled a visit, and no one expected him to show his face after the scandal that had detonated across every media outlet. Dressed in a dark trench coat, hair plastered to his forehead from the storm, he stood with an air of desperation, a far cry from the polished billionaire the world once revered. Security immediately informed Charlotte, who was in the private viewing room curating the upcoming exhibition. Without hesitation, she said, "Tell him I'm unavailable." Her voice was calm but resolute. She didn't ask why he had come. She didn't care. For her, the matter was no longer open for discussion. But James didn't leave. As the hours passed, he remained outside, soaked to the skin, pacing, occasionally speaking with gallery staff, asking, pleading, for just a few moments with her. By mid-afternoon, word spread through the gallery, and whispers grew louder among the art patrons. Phones discreetly snapped photos of him standing in the rain, waiting like a forgotten soul. Still, Charlotte refused to acknowledge him. She continued working, suppressing the storm churning inside her. But by early evening, after hours of his presence casting a long, wet shadow across the building, something inside her shifted. Maybe it was closure she wanted. Maybe it was the need to look him in the eye one final time and let him feel the weight of her silence. She stepped out into the dimming lobby, heels clicking against the marble floor, every movement precise, regal. When James saw her, he stood up straight, eyes red from the cold and something deeper: regret, fear, shame. Without a word, he walked toward her and, in a shocking moment of vulnerability, dropped to his knees. "Charlotte," he whispered, voice cracking. "Please. Please don't do this. I made a mistake. I was lost. I've ruined everything. But I love you. I need you." His voice broke as he looked up at her, eyes desperate, hands trembling. He reached for her hand, but she didn't move. She looked down at him, not with cruelty, but with a calm strength he no longer recognized. She inhaled slowly, then spoke, her voice clear and unwavering. "You didn't ruin everything when you cheated. You ruined it the moment you decided I wasn't worth the truth. You didn't just break a vow, you dismantled a life we built together, stone by stone, and you did it quietly, selfishly, thinking I'd never notice." Tears welled in his eyes, but she continued, her tone steady. "You gaslit me. You made me question my instincts. You turned our marriage into a performance for your image. And now that your stage is burning, you want me to stand in the ashes with you?" Silence followed. James tried to speak, but she raised a hand, firm, final. "This time, I choose myself." And with that, Charlotte turned, heels echoing like thunder down the gallery floor as she disappeared into the back room, leaving James kneeling, motionless, as if the weight of her words had crushed whatever hope he had left. The news had ignited a storm, but in the eye of it stood a single question that refused to fade: was James truly the father of Vanessa's child? The public was divided, with some condemning him as a reckless cheat and others suspecting Vanessa of using pregnancy as a weapon. James, for his part, was adamant. In press meetings, behind closed doors with his remaining allies, and even in his increasingly rare public appearances, he repeated the same message: "She's lying. She's trying to destroy what's left of my life." To those still willing to listen, he claimed he had ended things with Vanessa long before she announced her pregnancy and that she had fabricated the entire story to gain sympathy and media attention. But his protests held little weight in a world that no longer trusted him. Behind the scenes, a legal battle quietly brewed. James's attorneys pushed for a paternity test, and Vanessa agreed, smugly, confidently. "Let's prove it then," she had said, standing outside her flat with a swarm of cameras documenting every expression on her perfectly painted face. Her conviction rattled some. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who believed she had nothing to hide, and the public, ravenous for resolution, waited breathlessly for the outcome. Meanwhile, Charlotte remained untouched by the unfolding circus. For her, the question of paternity no longer mattered. The damage had been done. The foundation of her marriage had collapsed under the weight of secrets, lies, and humiliation. Whether or not James was the biological father of Vanessa's baby wouldn't undo the nights she cried herself to sleep, the stares from strangers in grocery stores, or the quiet questions from Leo when he asked why Daddy wasn't coming home. Her decision was already made, signed in black ink, processed by the court. The outcome of the test wouldn't heal the wounds, nor would it change her path forward. Still, the day the test results were delivered, the world seemed to hold its breath. Journalists camped outside clinics and law offices, insiders teased leaks, and tabloids speculated with growing ferocity. Then the statement came, simple, clinical, and final: James Whitmore was not the father. The words swept across news outlets like wildfire. Within moments, hashtags like #NotTheFather and #VindicatedWhitmore began trending. Some rejoiced on James's behalf, using the results as proof that Vanessa had manipulated him. Others rolled their eyes, arguing it didn't erase his infidelity, his betrayal, or the emotional devastation left in his wake. Vanessa, caught off guard by the result, released a shaky statement claiming she was shocked and that mistakes can happen. She insisted she had acted on what she believed to be true and that her intentions were never malicious. But the damage to her reputation was swift and brutal. Brand deals were canceled. Sponsors dropped her. She went silent online, her once vibrant social media presence vanishing into private mode. And James, though cleared of fatherhood, stood amid the wreckage of a life that, in truth, he had destroyed with his own hands, long before the paternity test had ever been conceived. In the weeks following the shocking revelation that James was not the father of Vanessa's child, whispers of another secret began to surface, slowly at first, then with growing momentum. A few observant gossip columnists picked up on inconsistencies in Vanessa's timeline, dates that didn't add up, sightings of her in unfamiliar company, and cryptic comments from insiders in the entertainment scene. Then, a damning leak broke the story wide open. Vanessa Hart had been romantically involved with Richard Kane, a notorious London nightclub owner known for his lavish lifestyle, shady business dealings, and frequent appearances in scandalous tabloid stories. Richard, in his mid-40s, was a magnet for controversy, but his name had never been linked to Vanessa until now. Photos emerged of the two together at private events, their body language far too intimate to dismiss. Witnesses claimed Vanessa had spent entire weekends at Richard's penthouse and had referred to him in private as her real connection. It became clear that while she publicly positioned herself as James's betrayed lover, she had been playing a much larger game behind the scenes. Vanessa's relationship with James had been strategic. She had used his name, his fame, and the scandal to catapult herself into the spotlight. Brand endorsements, interviews, modeling contracts, she gained them all by spinning a narrative of heartbreak and betrayal. But once the truth about Richard surfaced, her entire story crumbled. The paternity lie, the calculated interviews, the manipulative social media posts, it was all exposed. Her following turned on her. Overnight, she went from misunderstood victim to calculated opportunist. Facing mounting backlash, Vanessa deleted her Instagram account, declined all media requests, and vanished from public life. No more paparazzi shots. No more cryptic captions. Just silence. It was as if she'd never existed. James, for his part, tried desperately to use Vanessa's unraveling to reclaim some semblance of dignity. He released a formal statement condemning the manipulation, spoke in a televised interview about how he had been taken advantage of during a vulnerable time, and even made a sizable donation to a charity supporting single mothers to reshape his public image. But the effort felt hollow. Though the public acknowledged Vanessa's deceit, they didn't forget his actions, the lies to Charlotte, the gaslighting, the betrayal of his marriage. The scandal had already written itself into the public consciousness, and no amount of spin could undo the damage. James had been used, yes, but only because he made himself available for it through his own failures. The truth about Vanessa only reinforced what many already believed, that everyone in this story had their own agenda, and that some scars, especially the ones hidden behind polished smiles and designer suits, don't fade easily, no matter how hard you try to rewrite the ending. The day Charlotte filed for full custody of Leo, it was not a decision made out of vengeance, but one rooted in fierce maternal instinct. She had stayed silent long enough, endured humiliation in the public eye, and watched her son begin to feel the ripples of the chaos caused by James's choices. Leo, once shielded from the tension within their home, had started asking questions, innocent ones, but enough to make Charlotte realize that he deserved more than a broken household wrapped in silence. Her legal team filed the custody request with precision, attaching detailed documentation of James's affair, media coverage of the scandal, and psychological evaluations highlighting the potential harm to Leo's emotional well-being if he remained under shared custody with a father so consumed by damage control and image. James, upon receiving notice of the custody filing, reacted not with reflection, but retaliation. He did not challenge the filing out of love or remorse but because it threatened the one thing he clung to, his public reputation. Being stripped of access to his son, even partially, was not only a blow to his ego but a direct hit to the devoted family man persona he'd spent years curating. His lawyers advised a counterattack, and within days, James filed his own petition, arguing that Charlotte was acting out of emotion and seeking to alienate Leo from his father. He called in witnesses, former nannies, even a child psychologist who barely knew Leo, all in a bid to paint himself as an engaged and loving parent. The courtroom battles that followed were tense, emotionally charged, and at times explosive. Every seat was filled, media representatives took turns waiting outside, and reporters speculated with every recess. But Charlotte remained composed. She presented her case with dignity and truth, backed by an ironclad arsenal of evidence. Text messages between James and Vanessa, photos, receipts of gifts bought while he was on business trips, and records of James missing important milestones in Leo's life. Her lawyers methodically tore down every attempt James's team made to discredit her. James, when called to the stand, appeared rattled, defensive, evasive, and unconvincing under cross-examination. In contrast, Charlotte's testimony was powerful. She spoke not just as a mother, but as a woman who had been betrayed and belittled, yet still prioritized her child above her pain. She told the court, "This isn't about revenge. It's about creating a safe, stable future for my son. One that isn't shaped by public scandal and emotional neglect." The room fell silent, the weight of her words undeniable. In the end, the judge sided with her. Majority custody was awarded to Charlotte, with James allowed supervised visitation. Additionally, the financial settlement granted her half of his marital assets, citing emotional distress and the impact of his conduct on the integrity of their union. The verdict echoed like thunder in James's carefully constructed empire. He had fought to save his image, but in doing so, lost the very people who once humanized him. And for Charlotte, it marked not just a legal victory, but the beginning of a life on her own terms. The fallout from the divorce and public scandal hit James harder than he ever imagined. His sprawling penthouse in Mayfair, the symbol of his success and status, was sold quietly, the whispers of its association with scandal too loud to ignore. The once loyal board members at Luxora Technologies, seeking to preserve the company's fragile reputation, voted him out as CEO, effectively stripping him of the power he had wielded for so long. Shareholders distanced themselves, and public favor evaporated like mist. Friends in high society who had once clamored to be seen with him now avoided his calls or left invitations unanswered. The world that had once celebrated James as a titan of industry now saw him as a cautionary tale, a man undone by his own choices. Forced to downsize, James moved into a modest apartment on the outskirts of London, a far cry from the lavish lifestyle he had lived. The silence in that small space was deafening. Gone were the parties, the constant hum of assistants, the endless stream of business meetings and social engagements. He was alone with his thoughts, left to confront the wreckage of his life. It was in this solitude that he made the decision to seek help. Therapy sessions became a regular part of his routine, and for the first time in years, James faced the uncomfortable truths about himself. He examined the greed, the ego, the insecurities that had driven him to betray those closest to him. Each session peeled back layers of denial, forcing him to reckon with the man he had become and the man he had lost. It was a painful, humbling process, but also a necessary one. In the quiet moments between therapy appointments, James found himself writing a letter to Charlotte. It wasn't a desperate plea to mend their fractured relationship, nor a manipulative attempt to sway her feelings. Instead, it was a raw and honest apology, a recognition of the pain he had caused and a wish for her healing and happiness. He acknowledged his failures, took responsibility without excuse, and expressed gratitude for the years they had shared. He closed the letter not with hope for reconciliation, but with a sincere wish that she would find peace and joy in the life ahead. Sending it was one of the hardest things he ever did, but also one of the most cathartic. It marked a small step toward redemption, not through public acclaim or restored wealth, but through the quiet, personal acceptance of his mistakes and the desire to become better, even if it was too late to undo the past. Months after the tumultuous divorce and public fallout, Charlotte found herself standing in the grand hall of her very own art museum nestled in the heart of Paris. This was more than a professional achievement, it was a symbol of rebirth, resilience, and independence. The space, filled with carefully curated masterpieces that reflected her refined taste and passion, was a dream she had once shelved for the sake of family and duty. Now, it thrived as a vibrant hub for artists and art lovers alike, hosting exhibitions that challenged conventions and celebrated diversity. The museum was a testament not only to Charlotte's expertise but also to her strength to reclaim her life on her own terms. Leo, her young son, flourished in this new chapter. Freed from the shadows of scandal, he smiled more easily and grew with the confidence and stability Charlotte worked so hard to provide. Their days were filled with laughter, school projects, and quiet moments of reading in sunlit rooms. Every milestone Leo reached was a victory that reinforced Charlotte's belief in their fresh start. During this time, Charlotte crossed paths with Daniel Ellis, a journalist who had played a significant role in bringing the truth of James's scandal to light. Unlike the ruthless media vultures who sought sensational headlines, Daniel was different, gentle, respectful, and sincerely invested in telling stories with empathy and integrity. Their conversations began professionally but soon deepened into a meaningful connection. Daniel admired Charlotte's grace amid adversity, while she appreciated his honesty and unwavering support. They shared quiet dinners in cozy Parisian cafes, discussions about art, life, and the courage it takes to start over. It wasn't a whirlwind romance but a steady, grounding presence that reminded Charlotte she deserved kindness and companionship. For the first time in a long while, Charlotte allowed herself to smile freely, without hesitation or guardedness. The weight of betrayal and loss was still there, but it no longer defined her. She had shed the role of the betrayed wife and stepped into the light of her own identity, a woman empowered, whole, and hopeful. Standing amid the vibrant art and the soft hum of Parisian life, Charlotte finally felt the freedom she had longed for. It was a freedom born from pain, yes, but also from the unyielding strength of starting anew. In the quiet moments after the storm of scandal and heartbreak had passed, there remained a profound truth that resonated deeply: even the richest among us can be poor in character, and even those who have been betrayed can rise stronger than ever before. Life, Charlotte realized, was not measured by the wealth amassed or the grandeur displayed, but by the resilience one shows in the face of adversity. In a world obsessed with public image, with carefully curated appearances and social media facades, the true battle is often fought behind closed doors, where the private realities of pain, forgiveness, and growth unfold unseen. Trust, once broken, is not easily restored, and self-worth is something that must be reclaimed from within, independent of external validation or approval. Charlotte's journey was a testament to this lesson: how a woman betrayed and publicly humiliated could find her own strength, rebuild her life, and redefine what it meant to be whole. As the sun cast a warm glow through the expansive windows of her art gallery, Charlotte stood tall and serene, her young son Leo by her side. The gallery was no longer just a place of work, it was a sanctuary of hope, healing, and new beginnings. Surrounded by vibrant paintings and sculptures that spoke of endurance and transformation, Charlotte embodied the power of survival and the grace of moving forward. Leo, bright-eyed and curious, represented the future she fought for, a future built on love, honesty, and authenticity. Together, they symbolized a new chapter not only in their lives but in the story of what it means to reclaim one's narrative in a world quick to judge and slow to understand. Far from the polished halls and flashing cameras, James watched from a distance, a figure diminished but perhaps, finally, more aware. The man who once wielded power and control over so many had been stripped bare, forced to confront the consequences of his actions in solitude. The public may never fully forgive him, nor should they forget the lessons his downfall taught. Yet, in his quiet moments, away from the relentless scrutiny, there was a subtle shift, a relinquishing of pride and the acceptance that some things cannot be undone. Letting go, for James, was not about defeat but about facing reality and perhaps finding a sliver of peace in the acceptance of his faults. This story, at its core, serves as a reminder that behind every headline, every scandal, there are human beings grappling with the complexities of love, betrayal, and redemption. It challenges us to look beyond the surface, to value integrity over image, and to recognize that strength often lies in vulnerability. Charlotte's journey teaches us that self-worth cannot be dictated by others, that trust must be earned and guarded fiercely, and that healing is a path walked one courageous step at a time. In a world obsessed with appearances, it is the quiet resilience, the ability to rise from ashes, to choose oneself, and to embrace truth, that ultimately defines us.